Well, good morning. We're going to continue through the arguments of Henry of Ghent. Uh, they're said arguments to the contrary, but these are arguments contrary to the ones against. So that's a double negative. These are arguments for human beings being able to possess true knowledge. There are six of them, but really, if we look at it, there are two and a half basically arguments that he will use to argue for the existence of true knowledge in human beings. So we're on page 124, and you can go ahead and read the first argument really quickly. So the first argument that we just read boils down to basically this: human beings don't normally desire pointless things. We don't usually desire things with no gain, no end, or no purpose. And so, because human beings desire knowledge, therefore, knowledge is not pointless, so we can attain it, is kind of the argument. It'll be the same basic principle in point 2. He admits that by saying from the same premise. But we'll go ahead and read 2 as well. So argument 2 isn't an argument from the pointlessness of not being able to get knowledge if it doesn't exist, but instead he argues for the natural impulse that people have. That people fundamentally desire wisdom means that wisdom must be attainable, or else we would not desire it. It's basically the same argument, but he thinks it deserves another point. And the third one will also be from that exact same premise. So go ahead and read point number 3. So point number 3 is, the more we know, the more perfect we become. And so we have to, as we move towards perfection, which is what we are designed or made for, according to Henry of Ghent, if we weren't unable to attain knowledge, because humans couldn't have true knowledge, then we could never be perfect, which would be against what we were made for. Therefore, we must be able to gain true knowledge. With this one, though, you start to see maybe some problems. He's assuming the existence of a God that he hasn't necessarily proved in these arguments. If he were to first go about proving that God exists and then argue this, that might be possible, but that's not quite what he did. So he might be cutting some corners here, but that's okay. Let's move on to point number 4. This one's kind of the half argument. Go ahead and read this one. Remember, the philosopher is Aristotle. Point number 4, go ahead. So point number 4, the argument is to move from less knowledge to more knowledge means eventually there is an end goal, which is true knowledge. This is kind of building off of the idea of pointlessness and things like that, but he's taking it a little bit further. He's saying the fact that we can go from less knowledge to more knowledge means there has to eventually be a point where there is true knowledge. And so the goal is to get from no knowledge to true knowledge. Therefore, true knowledge must exist. Those are the first 4 arguments. They're there. I don't think they're the best. I think arguments 5 and 6, on the other hand, are they're much sounder, much more sound. They're much better, and I think they drive us to where Ghent wants us to get. I think they begin to prove that knowledge has to exist in a much better way. So go ahead and read point number 5 really quickly. So this will go back to Augustine's kind of sort of argumentation. To doubt means that you have knowledge, because at a minimum you know that you doubt, and that must be true. And he can prove that if you deny this, you are stuck in a logical inconsistency. And he pushes you towards circular reasoning here by saying either you are doubting that true knowledge exists, which means you know that true knowledge that you know that you doubt, or else you're not doubting, which means true knowledge exists. Either way, true knowledge exists, which is clever, and I think a good way to show the circularity of someone trying to affirm that there is no true knowledge. Argument number 6 is going to have the same basic heart. He's going to push it a little bit differently, though. So instead of, or go ahead and read 6. I forgot to let you read it. So go ahead and pause, read, and then we'll talk about 6. So here, instead of saying doubt means that you must have true knowledge, here he's saying the only certainty that you have is that you can know things. And you cannot, to immediately say you can't have true knowledge, here's the question. Do you know that you cannot have true knowledge? If the answer is no, well, then you could have true knowledge. But so instead of doubting, I guess I could say it this way. Doubting is the negative way to frame this argument. To say you doubt means you can't have knowledge. But here he's saying, I know that no one can know anything. Well, that's circular in one sentence. That's a tight circle, the worst kind of circular argument. So these are the arguments Henry of Ghent lays out for why we must be able to have true knowledge. But so now we're kind of left. On one hand, we have all the arguments against true knowledge. We read those yesterday. And today we have all the arguments for true knowledge. And so for the rest of what Henry Ghent's going to say, he's going to reply. Okay, let's go, Willow. He's going to reply to these, decide which ones are better, and then whichever argument side he thinks is worse, he's going to reply to each and every argument. I'm going to say, point 1, this is why they were wrong. Point 2, this is why they were wrong. And so that's what's going to follow. We will probably, next week, Monday, do a little bit more. So I'm pre-warning you. If you wanted to, you could read his replies and try to grab them early. But we're going to read pretty much all of it. So Monday will be a little bit of a longer day. And just see where he lands and how he responds to each of the arguments. And again, this would be a good format for you to think about writing your paper. Lay out the arguments, say this is the one that's better, this is the one that's worse, and this is how we respond to all of the arguments on either side. So have a good day, have a good weekend, and we will talk to you guys soon.